Listen to me. If you look at $10,000 and all you can think about is which hot stock is going to make you rich quick, you're already a prime candidate for bankruptcy. Everyone wants the big win, but nobody has the guts to sit there but in the chair and avoid the obvious mistakes. The secret to turning 10 into 100 isn't what you buy. It's what you stop doing today. Most of you are burning money right now trying to look smart for an envious neighbor. But pay attention. What I'm going to tell you in the third pillar of this plan is what separates men of real wealth from the boys living on crumbs, and it's where almost everyone falls apart. I've seen plenty of guys with master's degrees and PhDs fall flat on their faces because they can't control their own stomachs when the market swings. You believe this nonsense, that $10,000 is too little and that you need some master stroke, some miraculous leverage, to make the money worthwhile. The mathematical reality is that the first 10,000 is a character test. If you don't have the discipline to care for a small amount, the market will take away any large amount that falls into your lap by luck. Think about the stupidity of your haste. You spent years in school, perhaps decades in a job you hate, to scrape this sum together. And now you want to hand it over to the first swindler who promises exponential profits in a week. That isn't investing. That is assisted financial suicide. The cemetery of optimists is full of people who thought they were smarter than average. In the 1720s, Isaac Newton himself, a man who could calculate the movement of the stars, was wiped out by the South Sea bubble. He saw his neighbors getting rich, smelled the easy money, and threw his fortune into the abyss. He lost a lifetime of work because he couldn't handle the weight of his own envy. If Newton was stupid, who are you to think your hunch about the next digital currency or tech startup has any real value? What you feel now, this urge to multiply everything by 10 in 6 months, is the same poison that destroyed entire families in the 1929 crash. Back then, people borrowed money to buy stocks in companies they barely understood. They watched the ticker go up and thought they had discovered the fountain of youth. The result was a pit of misery that lasted a decade. What I want you to understand is that your initial $10,000 is an oak seed. If you plant it and keep digging up the soil every day to see if the roots have grown, you'll kill the tree. But your generation is addicted to dopamine. You want the result without the process. You want the glory without the trenches. Imagine the ruin. You wake up at 6 in the morning, open your brokerage app, and see that your 10,000 has turned into 5. The coffee on your table tastes like ash. Sweat starts to bead on your neck. You panic. You sell what's left to save the scraps. The next day, the market goes up. You're left behind. You bled because of your own emotional ignorance. This happens because you didn't respect the math of survival. To recover a 50% loss, you need to make a 100% gain. Do you understand the gravity of that? If you lose half of what you have by being an idiot, you'll have to be twice as brilliant just to get back to zero. And let's be honest, you aren't that brilliant. Nobody is. The journey to 100,000 starts with accepting that you are your own worst enemy. The financial market is a machine designed to transfer money from the impatient to the patient. It is a meat grinder for the arrogant. If you want to get out of the pit of mediocrity, you need to stop acting like a gambler and start acting like a cemetery owner. People die because of their own stupidity, and you simply profit from the passage of time and the inevitability of facts. Your brain is sabotaging you by making you feel like a failure because your cousin made money on some dog-themed cryptocurrency that isn't investing. It's a casino, and your ego is pushing you toward the cliff. I'm not going to give you a hot tip for tomorrow, but I will give you the tools to avoid destroying your financial future out of pure biological anxiety. Think about the biology of your brain. We evolved on the African savannas. If you saw a group of people running in one direction, you ran too, or you got eaten by a lion. That herd instinct saved your ancestors, but it will destroy your bank account. When you see everyone buying a specific stock, your primitive brain screams that you are missing a vital opportunity. It's the Lollapalooza effect acting on you, a combination of social proof, envy, and the fear of deprivation. You enter the trench without ammo and without a plan, just because you heard the noise of the others. Envy is the only capital sin that isn't fun. Gluttony is good while you eat. Lust is pleasurable for a moment, but envy only makes you suffer. You look to the side, see someone you consider dumber than you making easy money, and it eats at your stomach. To stop that pain, you make a risky bet with your meager $10,000. You're playing their game, not yours. The financial cemetery is full of the corpses of people who tried to keep up with their neighbor's pace. In 1999, during the dot-com bubble, any idiot with a computer and a dial-up connection felt like a financial genius. Companies that never turned a cent of profit were worth billions. People quit their jobs to day trade companies ending in .com. They looked at the charts and saw a straight line to heaven. But heaven has a limit, and gravity is an unforgiving law. When the bubble burst in 2000, billions of dollars evaporated. People who had $100,000 watched their net worth shrink to $5,000 in a matter of months. That knot in the stomach, the sense of betrayal, the despair of explaining to the family that the kid's college fund vanished on a stupid bet. This is the mental movie you should play every time you feel like being too clever. A successful investor needs a temperament that finds pleasure neither with the crowd nor against the crowd. You must be indifferent. If the market closed for 10 years and you couldn't see the price of your shares, you should be able to sleep like a baby. If you can't do that, you don't own stocks. The stocks own you. You are a slave to short-term fluctuation. Imagine this. You decide you're a genius and use your $10,000 to trade on leverage. You borrow money from the broker to buy triple what you could afford. If the stock goes up 10%, you gain 30%. It seems like magic, doesn't it? But if the stock falls 10%, you lose 30% of your original capital plus the interest on the loan. If it falls 30%, you are wiped out. You are annihilated. Cold sweat runs down your face as you get the margin call. You have no more money to cover the bet. The broker liquidates your position at the worst possible moment. You leave the market bleeding, swearing the system is rigged. The system isn't rigged against you. It simply ignores your existence and punishes your arrogance. The math of ruin is cruel. Most great investors didn't get rich by getting everything right, but by avoiding the great catastrophes. The secret is to not be stupid. It sounds simple, but it's the hardest thing in the world in an environment designed to seduce you every second. Financial marketing wants you to churn your portfolio, pay fees, and buy the new trendy product. They need your activity to profit. You, on the other hand, need inactivity to get rich. It's a battle between your ancestral biology and the need for compound accumulation. If you don't master the monkey living inside your head, that monkey will take your $10,000 and throw them into the fire just to keep warm for 5 minutes. The first pillar to take your 10,000 to 100,000 is the circle of competence. This works because the leading cause of loss is investing in something you can barely explain to a 5-year-old. Focus on the basics. If you don't understand how the company makes money, don't put a cent there. Stick to what is simple and obvious. The world is too complex, and you don't need to understand everything to be rich. You only need to understand a few things very well. Warren Buffett and I spent decades ignoring the tech industry. We didn't understand how those companies would maintain their competitive advantages for 20 years. Everyone called us dinosaurs in 1999. They said the world had changed, that the old economy was dead. We just smiled and kept holding our candy, soda, and insurance companies. When the abyss opened under the feet of the tech geniuses, we were sitting on a mountain of cash, ready to buy what was solid at bargain prices. Your circle of competence isn't the size of what you know, but how well you know the boundaries of your knowledge. If you are a pharmacist, you know more about the dynamics of a pharmacy than a Wall Street analyst. If you work in construction, you understand the cycle of materials and housing demand. Why on earth would you try to invest in or exploration in Alaska if you don't know the difference between a rock and a brick? The mistake most people make is trying to be too broad. They think diversification means buying a bit of everything they hear about. That isn't diversification. It's trash collection. If you have $10,000, you don't need 50 stocks. You need 3 or 4 excellent companies that you understand deeply. Imagine you have a punch card with only 20 spaces. Each punch represents an investment you can make in your entire life. If you knew you only had 20 chances, you would think long and hard before spending one on a telegram tip. You would study the balance sheet, understand the management, look at the dividend history, and only then act. The discipline of the circle of competence requires you to say no to 99% of the opportunities that come your way. Most people bleed money because they feel the need to always be doing something. They feel that if the money is sitting still, it's losing value. Stupid cash sitting still is a call option on someone else's chaos. When the market panics and quality assets drop 50%, the man who respected his circle of competence and kept his cash is king. Think of the math, step by step. Say you invest your $10,000 in something you understand. A solid company growing its profits at 15% a year. In the first year, you have $11,500. It doesn't look like much, right? Your friends are making that in a month with risky bets. By year 5, you have about $20,113. You doubled your capital while half your friends have already gone bust and returned to zero. By year 10, you have $40,455. By year 15, you have $81,370. By year 20, you've crossed the $163,000 mark. All this without ever running the risk of total ruin, just by staying within what you know. Time is the friend of the wonderful business and the enemy of the mediocre. If you are in a business you understand, and that is good, time will do all the heavy lifting for you. You don't need colorful charts or complex algorithms. You only need a clear competitive advantage and the discipline not to leave it. The second pillar is the inversion filter. Instead of looking for profit, look for what can lead you to ruin and eliminate those options first. List everything that would make you lose your $10,000 and simply don't do it. Survival generates profit. I always say, if I knew where I was going to die, I'd never go there. It sounds like a joke, but it's the most profound philosophy you can adopt. Financial success is a game of elimination. If you eliminate the big stupidities, what remains is inevitable success. What leads a man to ruin with $10,000? First, debt. Using money that isn't yours to bet on a future you don't control is the fastest path to the abyss. If you owe, you are a slave. If the market falls, The lender doesn't care if the company is good. He wants his money back now. Second, impatience. Trying to skip steps and thinking you can get to 100,000 in a year by trading options or futures contracts. This is the same as trying to cross a minefield by running. You might get lucky for 3 steps, but the 4th will blow you up. Third, lack of a margin of safety. Buying something at a fair price, assuming everything will go right. In the real world, things go wrong. Factories catch fire, managers lie, governments change the rules mid-game. If you don't have a margin of safety, if you didn't buy the asset for much less than it's worth, you are vulnerable. Think of the visceral scenario of inversion. Imagine you are an investor in 2008. You see the real estate market collapsing. Panic is everywhere. If you used the inversion filter, you don't have leveraged debt on properties you can't afford. You aren't bleeding. While everyone else is trying to figure out how to survive, you are calm. You inverted the problem. How do I not go broke in this crisis? By not breaking, you become the buyer of last resort. You take your 10,000, which now buys twice what it did before, and simply wait for the dust to settle. The math of inversion is the math of preservation. If you avoid 50% losses, you don't need 100% returns. It is much easier to not be stupid than to try to be brilliant. A steady 10% annual return, without big drops, destroys a 30% return in 1 year, followed by a 40% drop in the next. Let's narrate that equation. If you start with 10,000 and gain 30%, you have 13,000. The next year, you lose 40% of that value. Now you have $7,800. You are worse off than when you started, despite having 1 brilliant year. Now, if you seek safety and earn a consistent 8%, in the first year you have 10,800, and in the second 11,664. You are far ahead of the genius who tried the impossible. The financial pit is full of geniuses who had 1 year of glory and a lifetime of regret. Inverting means looking at the future and seeing your older self, poor and broken, and asking, what did he do to get there? He probably spent more than he earned, tried to get rich quick, and didn't diversify his ignorance. So your task is simple. Don't do those things. The third pillar, and the hardest of all, is the discipline of doing nothing. The big money isn't in the buying or the selling, but in the waiting. This is where your old software fails. Once the plan is set, your job is simply to not get in the way of compound interest. Let time work while you go read a book and take care of your life. Most investors suffer from financial hyperactivity. They think that to make money they need to be trading, clicking buttons, reading breaking news. This is an illusion that only benefits the broker. True wealth is built while you sleep, not while you type. Look at Coca-Cola. We bought Coca-Cola shares decades ago. If we had sold at the first jump, or the first political scare, or the first sugar crisis, we would have lost billions in long-term value. We simply sat on our butts and let the company sell soda to the whole world. The sugar and the water did the work for us. The discipline of inactivity requires superhuman willpower because the world is constantly screaming for you to act. Newspapers need to sell disaster headlines. Analysts need to justify their salaries by suggesting portfolio changes. If you succumb to this noise, you will bleed. Imagine the detailed exponential effect. You have your $10,000. You chose a good asset and decided to do nothing. In year 1, the growth is invisible. In year 10, you begin to see the power of accumulation. But it's between year 20 and year 30 that the magic happens. It's the end of the chessboard. where every tiny percentage of growth applies to a massive base. If you start with 10,000 and get a 12% annual rate, in 10 years you have 31,000. In 20 years, 96,000. In 30 years, 299,000. In 40 years, you have almost $1 million. Now, pay attention. Most of that gain, over $700,000, happened only in the last 10 years. If you had become impatient in year 15 and sold everything to buy a new car or invest in a hot tip, you would have killed the hen before she started laying golden eggs. You would have criminally interrupted the process against your own future. The hypothetical scenario is this. You are in year 25 of your journey. Your net worth is already considerable. The market drops 30% in a month. Your neighbors are panicking. The television says it's the end of capitalism. You feel the urge to sell, to save what's left. But you remember the pillar of inactivity. You realize nothing has changed in the fundamentals of the companies you own. They continue selling their products. They continue making a profit. You decide to do nothing. You go fishing. You go read a history book. 2 years later, the market has not only recovered everything but doubled in value. Because you had the courage to be boring, you are now rich. Patience is a competitive advantage, because almost no one possesses it. In a world of instant gratification, the man who can wait a decade for a result is a predator in a field of easy prey. Ruin doesn't come from a lack of opportunity. It comes from the inability to wait for the right opportunity and to hold on to it when it arrives. Accumulating wealth is a game of endurance, not speed. Your first 10,000 are the seed. If you keep digging it up to see if the root has grown, it will die. Remember, it's incredible how much of a competitive advantage people like us have obtained by constantly trying to not be stupid, instead of trying to be very intelligent. The world is full of brilliant idiots who are broke. They have formulas, they have mathematical models, they have expensive suits, but they don't have control over their own ego. They are slaves to the next fluctuation. They live in the abyss, hanging by a thread of arrogance. You should aspire to be the opposite. Be boring. Be patient. Accept the fact that real enrichment is a slow, gradual, and often unexciting process. There is nothing exciting about watching your net worth grow 1% a month for 20 years, until you realize you own a fortune that no one can take from you. The finitude of time is the only variable you cannot control. Every time you make a stupid mistake out of impatience, you are throwing away months or years of your life that will never come back. You are working for your money, instead of making your money work for you in the trench of time. The cemetery is full of people who planned to be rich tomorrow and forgot to survive today. Don't be the hero of the story who dies in the first chapter for lack of common sense. Be the survivor who, at the end of the book, is sitting in a garden he planted himself, watching others run in circles while he enjoys the peace that only discipline can buy. The final ultimatum is this: you can be smart and broke, or you can be disciplined and rich. The choice is made with every decision to not spend, every decision to not follow the herd, and every decision to stay the course when everything around you seems to be falling apart. The market has no mercy for the weak-spirited. It will test your gut repeatedly. If you pass the test of the first $10,000, you will have what it takes to reach 100,000, a million, and beyond. But if you fail now, if you let greed and stupidity take the wheel, the abyss will be your final destination. Think about that as you look at your money today. It is not a tool for immediate consumption. It is your passport to freedom. provided you have the decency not to lose it on the way to the airport. The world owes you nothing. The market doesn't care about your dreams. All that exists is cause and effect. Be the cause of your own prosperity through the denial of your own stupidity. Don't try to be clever. Just try desperately not to be an idiot every single day of your life. That is enough.